So Geoff Young is a Democratic candidate for the governor of Kentucky. Geoff Young is a very impressive man, politician. He's the most progressive candidate that is running in Kentucky. And so if I was living in Kentucky still, I would vote for Geoff Young. I would vote for Geoff Young over Adam Edelin, over Rodkey Atkins, and then over Baby Brashear. So Geoff Young, everything that he had talked about is the exact opposite of what was done. So Geoff Young said we need to have liberal laws when it comes to abortions. You want to lower the abortion rate? Well, then you need some sex education, you need some contraception, and you need to have safe and legal abortions. So that's, if you want to have a lower abortion rate, if you're being serious about it, there's evidence, there's a study out there that says essentially that exact thing. When it's illegal, they're more dangerous and they happen more often. So when it comes to abortion, he was sitting there saying that he protects the Roe v. Wade, he protects the right to choose. And yet, did anybody in Kentucky give a shit? I thought this was a woman's issue, but apparently, even though he's speaking to, one of the staple women's issues, there's, he's doing the exact opposite. You know what I mean? Like, Matt Bevin also comes in to bust the unions. Matt Bevin comes in to bust the unions with the so-called right-to-work bill. And the right-to-work bill is anti-unions, which is anti-working class. Unions are there to protect the working class. Unions are there to make sure that you have a safe working condition, that you're being paid a decent wage. It was also what got rid of the, child labor. It's also what give us 8-hour work days. It's also what give us the weekend. There's a lot of things that they also got health care in the workplace, and they've been pressuring the government for a lot of really great ideas and really, great bills. So the unions historically have been very important, and they could be important now. I think maybe we need to evolve. We need to do something different because the unions are on the ropes. There's only 9% unions, and they're going to sit there and act like the unions are what's ruining the country. If only 9%, the unions are not what's ruining the country. The criminals, the crime, the corruption, that's what's ruining the country. The unions are just people saying we're going to stick together and we're going to have a contract with the employer. What the fuck? That's not bad. How are you going to be people should be allowed to join a union if they want to. It's their choice. If you don't want to, that's your choice. So Geoff Young is running on stronger unions. That's how we're going to build the middle class, by having stronger unions. Geoff Young was running saying that he's pro-choice, and instead of listening to his policies or giving him any airtime or any credence whatsoever, instead Kentucky is just going to go with the guy that, he says he's Republican, he says he's conservative. So the policies that Geoff Young were advocating, are, right now Kentucky is doing the exact opposite. Kentucky needs Geoff Young. Kentucky needs Geoff Young for many reasons. Geoff Young was the very first candidate to announce his campaign for the governor's race, the very first one. But the pollsters, Ballotpedia, they had reported the pollsters didn't even put his name on the polls. They haven't been doing debates or inviting him to the debates or whatever they're doing. And so, what the hell, Kentucky? That's not fair. That's not cool. He's the very first one that run for, he's the very first person to announce his candidacy. The very first one. And you're just going to pretend he's not there? The main reason, not the main reason, but this reason, Geoff Young was educated at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. You know how smart you got to be to go to MIT and then to graduate from MIT? He's educated in economics. He also was taught by Noam Chomsky. He actually taught a class, American Foreign Policy and something else, Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky actually educated Geoff Young. Those two reasons by themselves should just, he was educated by Noam Chomsky and he listens to him and he takes, a lot of his philosophy when it comes to American foreign policy from him. Okay, just run the state. Noam Chomsky is so important and so, everybody, looks up to the guy. So Noam Chomsky to sit there and pretend that Geoff Young not only is intelligent and smart, he actually gives a shit. So he's smart, intelligent, and he gives a shit. So those reasons by themselves just should shut the conversation down. Okay, Geoff Young can be governor. So his policies are precisely the remedy for Kentucky poverty and all the other diseases, the heart disease and the diabetes, There's diabetes all over the place. There's heart disease, and then there's obesity. So a lot of fat meth heads, who can't read. So he wants the unions to build the middle class. He wants to stop corruption. He wants to legalize all forms of marijuana. Geoff Young wants to protect Roe v. Wade. He wants to protect Roe v. Wade. He's the only one brave enough to actually criticize Matt Bevin, the Christian right, and the GOP on the issue of abortion. He wants to overturn Bevin's executive order, which discriminates against the Palestinians. He wants universal single-payer health care. Oh, you have a lot of STDs, you got a lot of chlamydia, you have a lot of people that are dying of, stupid diseases here and there, easily preventable disease, just a vaccine away, right? So you want to have Kentucky to be healthy, then you would elect Geoff Young to be your governor. He wants single-payer health care. He wants everybody in Kentucky to have a nice, good, health is life. So he wants them to have good health so they can have a good life. Geoff Young wants to tax millionaires and billionaires and lower taxes for the middle and lower classes. That would help the poverty. That would help the economics. Tax the millionaires and billionaires and then lower your taxes. So Kentucky, you want to lower taxes? Okay, get Geoff Young in there. He will lower your taxes. You will pay less taxes under a Geoff Young administration. Unless you're a millionaire or billionaire, then, their taxes are going to be raised. He's for energy efficiency and renewables. He wants, wind, or he wants solar power and hydroelectric dams. So he says that Kentucky is ripe for solar panels and hydroelectric dams. Putting a turbine inside of a stream can generate enough electricity for one house. And there's streams all over the place in Kentucky. It's the number 2 state for the most amount of waterways. Geoff Young also wants to promote worker-owned businesses and co-ops, so more towards, kind of the unions. So worker-owned businesses. So that means you don't even have the employers. It's the working people who own the, factory, the means of production. He wants to prevent the National Guard from being sent out of the U.S. He hated how the National Guard, which is supposed to be a state guard, it's supposed to be, National Guard is supposed to defend the state. Sometimes they nationalize it. JFK nationalized the National Guard to go after the segregationists in Alabama, the Wallace, fucking racist assholes. But Bush used the National Guard to send them 3, 4, 5 tours of duty and relied on them a lot more than what any other president had done before. So we're sending National Guard out to, international wars too. So he wants to protect the National Guard, keep them in Kentucky so they can, during natural disasters, to protect Kentucky. That's the point of having the National Guard. A state National Guard is there to protect the state. So to have them focus on domestic issues. Geoff Young also wants to abolish the death penalty. Okay, so that's the top 11. He's got an 11-point plan. So Geoff Young has a plan. He's got an 11-point plan. You know exactly where he stands on, the important issues. So this is, he's educated, he's smart, he went to MIT, he's educated by Noam Chomsky. All of his planks on his platform would make Kentucky richer and better and give them better social safety nets and give them better health and have lower abortion. You want less abortions? Okay, if you're being serious about it, then you would elect Geoff Young. Are you being serious? Or are you just being an asshole? Oh, you're like, oh, okay. Just pass the law, ban it. That's the only thing you want, huh? Well, do you want less abortions? Overall, the proof is in the pudding. So if there's more abortions, how are you going to sit there and say you did a good job? Yeah, you made it illegal, but now there's more abortions. So Geoff Young is the perfect foil to Matt Bevin. Geoff Young is very progressive. He really hates the war, and the war continues. It's a forever, infinite war. I don't see an end to it unless we elect Tulsi Gabbard, which is, just as big of a long shot. So there's a bunch of things. I was his running mate, full disclosure, in 2015, so I'm a little bit biased. He's a short, small man, but he's progressive as fuck. And what does a governor have to do? They do have to get on TV, and they do need to make speeches but they also need to pass good policies. They also need to make sure that Kentucky goes forward. Kentucky needs to get into the 21st century. Kentucky needs to be more modern. So Kentucky would be put back on the map under a Geoff Young administration. Kentucky would be super rich and super free under a Young administration. So because I ran with him, I'm a bit biased because, I like the guy, but I'm biased, I think, because of my involvement in 2015 really showed who Geoff Young was. There was no way you could ignore that Geoff Young was in the race in 2015. Jack Conway, Geoff Young. Those were the two candidates. And so it was between, you couldn't ignore it. You couldn't ignore it. But how are you going to continue to treat him the exact same way? You're not going to invite him to the debates. If you deprive a person of speaking idea, you're not just, depriving them, but you're also depriving the listener. The listener could hear an idea that they hadn't considered and that they liked. So if you're going to sit there and discriminate against this person and that person, the reason that he's being discriminated against, it's not even a good reason. It's because he's a progressive. It's because he actually gives a shit about the issues. It's because he tells the truth. Oh, he tells the truth? Well, that's not a good politician. You're supposed to, give the bullshit. And so that's not a good reason to discriminate against somebody. Oh, you're for unions? Well, I'm going to discriminate against you. When Kentucky was great was during the Harlan County coal miner strike. That's when Kentucky was great. Remember when everybody got together and they said, no, hell no, we're going to stick together and we're going to have safe working conditions and we're going to have better wages. We're going to stick together. Remember when we all did that? Remember when we all just joined hands, sang Kumbaya, and, made sure the damn fascist bastards were taking down a peg or two? So I'm frustrated with the campaign. Ballotpedia didn't really care much about my policies. Nobody really asked about my policies. The media didn't get, my word out. They discriminated against Geoff, and so I'm the running mate, so, by association, I would get discriminated against too. But my role in the campaign was to make Geoff Young very visible. He was noticed. He was visible. He sued the Democratic Party. And like Bernie Sanders, the Democratic Party, rigged the elections. They rigged the elections and they cheated Geoff Young. And so if you want a fair Democratic Party that actually believes in democratic principles, you would vote for Geoff Young. Geoff Young should be running the Democrat Party of Kentucky. The state Democrat Party fucked him over. And even though he got fucked over by those guys, he said if he was running the Democrat Party, he would still allow them to come because, you're allowed to speak and you have a right to, come to the thing. So I'm more frustrated because it seems like the same bullshit is happening again in 2019. The Democrat Party, there's almost no Democrats left. Democrats keep on dwindling in numbers. There's still more Democrats than Republicans, but both houses have super Republican majorities. And Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, the senators, most of the congressmen, representatives are Republicans. I think maybe 2 are Democrats in Louisville. So you got one, the cities are usually more liberal than the country anyways. Also, you had like 8 Obama states and then 4 Obama states, so they got more racist as Obama was president. Went from 8 to 4 out of 120. So Geoff Young, he's got a lot of these policy planks, and what do you do? What do you do when you're being shut out? You're going to, become Republican? I guess he could try to become a Republican. Maybe they would actually give him a fair shake. They're not really giving him a fair shake this year. 5 or 4 years ago, they're very good when it comes. They had Lincoln Douglas debates. They had those 4 Republican candidates talking to a bunch of different counties, and they, were able to do it. So even though they're all competitors, they were able to sit next to each other and talk about the issues in front of Kentuckians. That's how it should be done. Now, he sues the Democratic Party and he sues a lot of the organizations in the Democratic Party because of he's being shut out. And people might, people are frustrated with him because he's a progressive and he tells the truth, and that makes them uncomfortable. But, he poses no threat to anybody. He's a pacifist, a peace activist, an anti-war guy. So he just wants to, share his ideas, and he thinks that he has a better vision, which he does, and better planks on his platform, which he does. He's the most progressive candidate in the race, bar none, bar none. So I guess I'll say a little bit more later on, but I'm the only Democrat candidate with the courage to sue 23 corrupt individual and 10 corrupt organizational members of the Kentucky Democratic Party for chronic election fraud in 2014, 2015, 2018, and 2019 undemocratic primaries. Kenton County Democrats are one of the corrupt organizational defendants named in Geoff Young's latest lawsuit, which he filed and served on April 10th, 2019, and he suggested that the Kenton County Democrats get an attorney before their time limit ran out. And then he also posted the complaint in his Dropbox. So Geoff Young is suing the Democratic Party because he wants the Democratic Party to go back to their working class roots of protecting unions and fighting for the poor and middle classes. And they're not doing that. They're taking all this money, so they're all beholden to a bunch of powerful, rich, plutocratic assholes. So he's the most progressive member in the race. There's 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, 1 Libertarian, and I think 1 Socialist Workers' Party, but they may have trouble getting on the ballot because, they're independent, so of course they're stupid and they're not welcome in Kentucky. You can't be an independent thinker. You gotta love Confederacy. You gotta love the Confederacy. Even though Kentucky destroyed the Confederacy, killed Confederates, murdered lots of Confederates, and won the war. Kentucky won the war. Kentucky fought on the side of Abraham Lincoln and to fight against the slaves, liberating, a lot of former slaves and getting them freedom. So even though he has to deal with the lawsuits and that kind of bullshit, it would be better just to hear him out and hear what he has to say instead of having to go, making him go through this shit and then making you go through this shit. And so I would rather him talk about the issues, but I think he has to do this. He has to sue them because what the fuck else? They're going to shut him out. He tried to start the Green Party, but he didn't get, that didn't go too far. And so he tried to create another party, and since that wasn't working, he just, I guess, thinks you have to reform the Democratic Party. That's the party of the people, and we have to reform it. We got to reform it. That's the only way we're going to get some freedom. And then also, he's a good man. The idea that if he was the head of the DNC of Kentucky, or the KDP, the Kentucky Democratic Party, if he was heading the KDP, he said he would let all those people that shut him out back in. So he's not a hypocritical piece of shit. He's actually a nice, decent, forgiving dude. He's a Buddhist. He's a Buddhist, so he's one with everything, right? One with nature, one with the one energy. So that means he's got, peace. He's got an inner peace to him. He rides bikes and he's active and he's a good guy. So ultimately, when it comes to being a governor, can he sign the bills? Geoff Young can sign his name on a bill. Can Geoff Young introduce legislation? Yes, Geoff Young could introduce legislation. He could sign the bill, introduce legislation. He could be the governor. And with his policies, he's precisely what Kentucky needs. So, until next time, Kentucky, peace.